in my face.
A premium account on Twitter is required to create live broadcasts. Well, off
There
you
goes
go.
Twitter.
Save changes. We're live. Everything's live. Woo! Hey, welcome to Backpack Show. I don't know why that is. Twitter? Maybe I'd be a boob.
Finding the glamorous backstage backpack show experience.
It's a package. Hey, we should talk about hobbies today. That's because that's what I put on the thing. And I thought we'd talk about what are yours, but also I want to talk about a show that you run sometimes with Katie Robert. So we've got a lot of things to talk about. It should be a fun one.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
So we were checking the technical details of the setup right up until the last second.
Yes. I don't know why that was last second. It's so weird. Yeah, do I still sound pretty tinny? Because I'm using my earbud things. Maybe that's it. Maybe they're not so good audio.
We'll live. I think it'll be okay.
All right. Well, Jonathan's here. My dad's here. My mom's here. That's always good. Hey, I don't know if you knew this, but we're sponsored by StreamYard.
I did know that. I'm actually really happy about that. So a whole bunch of new stuff that we're not using yet. So if you've never tried StreamYard before, now is a pretty good time to do it. You can like move elements around. You're not stuck with this like 2-person side-by-side setup. You can put things wherever you want them. So just so you know, lots of options.
Where would I put you if I didn't put you side by side? That's sort of a strange question. It does sound a bit echoey, says Jonathan. Well, I have a solution to that.
He's going away. He's going to take his microphone and go home. My microphone, since I've changed my setup, keeps randomly getting unplugged. So I have to check it every time we come on. I don't know if I'd call podcasting a hobby of mine. I guess it's been a hobby of mine since 2005 when I had a podcast called Baby Time. And that was back when it was like really hard to do a podcast, like technically hard. You needed to hook up your XLR mics or other mics made for other purposes because like they didn't have prosumer options really for microphones at that time because it wasn't like as democratic as it is now. So there was many, many steps. And my husband, Dan, did all the heavy lifting of getting the recording onto someplace where people could see it. It's iTunes. And but I've been podcasting since then. I guess you'd call it a hobby, but I've been paid for it at times.
Well, I wasn't that I was going to say that podcasting's a hobby as such, but for a lot of people it is. But you did a show that was kind of around hobbies, right? I mean, explain Punch Out and what that show is for the people that don't know about your show.
So Punch Out started because I was at the time hosting Marketing Smarts for Marketing Profs, and I'd been doing it for about, I forget now, like 7 or 8 years. And so talking about marketing week after week, which is like very interesting, talking to the best minds in marketing for that long, but also I would like, sometimes to talk about other stuff. And I found that those moments with people before the show when I was kind of warming them up were to me some of the most interesting when we would talk about, hey, what have you been up to? And they'd be like, oh, I went, parasailing this weekend, or I was volunteering in Guatemala last week or whatever. Those bits were so interesting to me, seeing what fueled people's passions, what refilled the wellspring of their creativity in between marketing books, marketing jobs, things like that. So I started a podcast about nothing but that stuff. It was like, at first it was like anything but marketing. And then I thought, oh, that's a little limiting, because what I'm really interested in, I'm not anti-marketing, obviously, is what I do, but I'm very into understanding what fuels people and what brings them satisfaction in their life in general. So Katie Robert, who I'd met at the B2B Marketing Forum in San Francisco, and we were like instant close friends. And she was like, I want in. This sounds fun. So we co-hosted together and decided to launch a podcast about only the fun stuff. So people's like weird collections and interesting hobbies and volunteer work and stuff like that.
So Punching Out is that show. And I was just showing
Punch Out.
Punch Out, sorry. I don't know why I always want to call it punching out, but it is not. But like looking at these episodes, you've got Ray Sheen on historical dancing, war reenactments, and really big cannons. This is a funny crossover because this is what I was thinking about. Is last week we covered your trip to Hampton Court Palace and Hever Castle, and I was like, wow, you could really go on this. Like this is a real passion for you. It's interesting how people talk differently when they talk about their passions. Did you find that throughout the show? Like, is it easy to get someone going once they're talking about the thing they love?
Yeah, I mean, of course. So there's two things people can talk at great length with ease about. One is a professional thing that they do all the time. Like you at the drop of a hat could talk about anything relating to leadership, marketing, writing, any number of topics. But the things that light them up inside usually are not that. The kids that can also talk with ease about their hobbies. And the first season of Punch Out is you were on it, I believe. All people that our community would recognize. So people like Ann Hanley and you, and we get into the second season, and it's a lot more of marketing and comms people and authors and leaders in the communication space people would recognize. And then I thought it'd be sort of fun to have a season focused on like an industry, not marketing. So then we went with tech and talked with people in the tech space. So we talked with Rodney Nissen, who's really well known in the Atlassian ecosystem as the Jira guy. And he talked about how he had his own home lab, which was pretty interesting, and how he liked to go, I want to say kayaking or something like that. But you learn these things about people that you would never have occasion to talk about if all you wanted to talk about was their professional interest, like Jira, that kind of stuff. So anyway, we had a whole season. We interviewed Rachel Wright, who's another big Atlassian consultant, kind of like an Atlassian rock star, about her working and living out of an RV, which I hesitate to even call that a hobby because we had her on the show later too. It's just her lifestyle now, but it started out as a hobby. So you learn what motivates and fuels and drives people apart from their professional work, kind of what pays the bills. And to me, seeing people lit up on the inside, it's really rewarding.
I find it interesting to talk about those kinds of pursuits and passions because I find that any kind of hobby that you're really into, it does a couple different things for us, doesn't it? Like for instance, when things aren't going the best at work, or when you're frustrated, or with the family, or whatever, a hobby is something you can kind of retreat to for a while and kind of put your mind around it. A hobby usually has some sense of borders and boundaries to it. So because you can pick it up and put it down, it means that you have a little bit more sense of control around it. The other thing is because it's thought of as a hobby, just like play is, the definition of play is it doesn't really have a meaningful outcome, so to speak. I think it's very interesting that with things like hobbies, you can put a lot of energy and love into them, even if they're not like your main thing. And I think that's exciting. I also think that sometimes it can bring back to other things. So maybe some of the things that you're doing in a hobby, when you get back to work, you're thinking, oh, well, that's interesting. It made me think of X. Do you have any thoughts around any of that?
Well, some of my hobbies include horror movies and horror novels, travel, and then, of course, history. Tudor history largely, but lots of other kinds of history, European history as well. And I think history in particular is a good hobby to have because situations, like there's only so many stories, so many narratives of how things go kind of in general and in any context, like relationships, work, government. So if you study history long enough, you're going to have like a roadmap for getting you through just about any situation. So that hobby in particular, I think is valuable. For other people, I do think there's the opportunity to kind of cross-pollinate and come up with more creative ideas for work based on what you see out there. Sort of like we always say B2B marketing isn't that different a creature really. In some ways it is, but you can grab ideas from B2C. You just need to sort of make adjustments, bridge concepts, make your stuff relevant to a B2B audience. So, but yeah, there's opportunity all the time. I think if your brain is operating in kind of that fun space, you are more open to considering things that you might shut down if you were in the work-minded space. How many spaces you have?
I was thinking about the fact that every time we would go to B2B Forum, our friend Steve Garfield from stevegarfield.com would organize a photo walk that every year got a little more grandiose, a little more official, a little more theme under it. And I've been really into photography lately. And so, of course, I've been thinking about Steve a lot lately, and Steve has been thinking about me. And I was thinking about, though, what's kind of fun about doing the photo walk is that it took us in a completely different mental space and definitely a different physical space by going on those walks. You've been on, I think, at least one. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
So the fun fact, I worked at Marketing Profs for 8 years and went to the forum, I think more years than that, because I would volunteer. So I always signed up to be the staffer that accompanied people on the photo walk because I wanted to go outside. So it's brutal in one sense. It's very early in the morning. It has to be before the first, like the breakfast session. So you're talking like 7 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, meeting up with Steve Garfield and kind of shepherding everybody along the streets of the city. And you got to make sure you don't lose anybody. So I mean, it's like high stakes, but it's very fun. So I took that spot every year I could get it. And if I could not be the official person, I would still go, provided I didn't have other duties. So I've been to a bunch of them. And I don't know if I'd say it's gotten more grandiose. I would say every group is different. And as the years have progressed, people have come to expect more from Steve. So it's a lot of planning that Steve and his wife Carol put into these walks. They find out where the event's going to be. They map the nearby area. They find a route that's walkable in the time allotted, providing time for stopping and taking some picturesque photos. They stop themselves along the way and make note of where they ought to stop and give people a chance to take pictures. But what I love about Steve and always have is that he is so thoughtful in his approach to helping other people discover their own way of taking pictures. So he doesn't tell you, stand here, take this picture. Isn't that an interesting picture? He's like, hey, this is what a lot of people stop to take photos of. You might think, maybe something else here is more interesting, or maybe take it from a different angle, or maybe get up or down or sideways, or take a picture of the people taking pictures. Like whatever lights you up is what he wants you to do. So it's my favorite. It's always been my favorite. I, as an attendee, since I've started working at AppFire, I've gone back to the B2B forum as a speaker and as an attendee, and I go on the photo walk still.
I just watched a massive photo walk in London with a bunch of these various little London YouTuber photo walk people or YouTube photographers. And what was fun about it was that it was a little weird to see in a swarm. There was like 100+ people, and these people take it seriously compared to like the good chunk of people who go on that photo walk with just like their phone and like snap whatever they see and just do it for the fun of it. What was interesting is how so many people can see something with different eyes. Like they can go after different stuff. Like what I tend to go after would be different than what you shoot. And I think that's kind of an exciting part about photography. No matter the technology you use, it does come down to like, what do you think is interesting? Related, recently, I went on a trip to 3 different parts of southern New England. So I went to Nubble Light, which is a famous lighthouse that is super over photographed. And there's a little scene at the beginning of this. I thought I would show that just because it's sort of funny to me. Like, just watch for a second. So here I am. I take the perfunctory photo of the lighthouse. But then when I get in for a second, I come over here and I see this. I don't know. I don't even know what that is. It's like a little plaque kind of a thing, but there's all that condensation on it. And I get more interested in shooting the condensation because I notice the texture. And I go, oh, that's kind of a cool shot. So there's that beautiful looking lighthouse in the distance, and I'm like, "Ooh, would you look at that little thing?" So, like, I think that's the exciting part too of photo walks is that you go to a place and you experience it the way you want to experience it. Are you drawn to certain things and not other things in photography?
First of all, I like taking pictures of people taking pictures. I've done it to you. Anytime you stop to take a picture, I'll take pictures of you. So you have a few like that, because I'll send them to you afterwards. It's like creepy, but also interesting to see what's caught someone else's attention. And so if you follow their gaze, you can decide whether you agree with them that thing is interesting or not, or, if you see something just to the side that might interest you more. But I am interested in people and their perspectives. That's why I like history. That's why I interview people. That's what I like about photography too, is seeing what catches your eye. So that's when I go around with you, that's what I enjoy. I also like taking my own photos through doors and windows and passageways and hallways and hedges and hedgerows and stuff. Like anything that you're looking through, I like for the same reason. So a couple of things I like about them are in some cases, you're walking someplace that somebody in history walked, and that's exciting. Or you're seeing a view that they would have seen. And I kind of love that, like standing in their footsteps. But even if that's not the case, if I'm just in Beacon Hill or something and those buildings are old and you're taking photos of windows and doors, you imagine people walking there and you're sharing their space, their perspective. And I don't know what I exactly like about it, except to say that it reminds me that we are all part of a shared human experience. Things that we experience as our own, and we feel kind of isolated about them, they're actually universal, like pretty universal, a lot of them. So I guess shooting doors and windows and passageways reminds me of my place in the human race.
I get there, but I get there a different way. So I think that's so fun to talk about, because like I shoot it by shooting the people. So this is probably my favorite shot of those 3 trips I did all side by side together. And it's not for any great reason. It's not the best photo in the whole wide world, but what it is like, there's that mom, and she's clearly bushed. That kid in the stroller looks like he's had the end of everything. The kid in the blue looks like he's still got so much energy. There's a woman over on the bench. She looks like she just is done with it all. This is like a very touristy part, York Beach, Maine. And it's sort of like a diaspora of people. And I steal that from some of the photographers I really like, Gary Winogrand and some of these other like famous street photographers. I steal it because I do find that it's like it's exciting to see what you're going to see out there, but it's also kind of fun to me to capture people, in their moments taking their shots. So I think it's super fun to talk about that, because I think learning what grabs you becomes a sort of exciting way to learn what does that mean to your brain? Like the fact that I like getting people at random beaches, because I happen to live near beaches. But I'm not looking for the beauty. I'm looking just for like expressions and things. I'm looking for, people who look worn out or whatever. So it's just interesting, like the things that get to us. Scooters and bicycles, for some reason. Hi, Leslie. For some reason, I can't go buy a scooter or a bicycle without taking a picture of it. You do doors, windows, and hedges and things. I think that's fascinating. Do you think that becomes true of, I mean, I guess it does, right? Other hobbies, like, so someone might be into making miniatures. Someone might be into making paintings or something. I wonder what our hobbies tell us about ourselves.
Oof, that's a lot to take in. First, I would say that people evolve over time, and so their hobbies evolve over time. Once in a while, you'll see somebody who's like, I don't know, done model shipbuilding or something their whole life. And maybe it's because one of their parents did it. Maybe it's because they discovered it one time. It's sort of rare, in my experience, for a hobby to stick forever. But something like photography can, because your photography evolves with you in a way that like model shipbuilding maybe doesn't change that much. So all this to say, I have always taken photos of my experiences. I do differently now. Like when my kids were little, I used to take pictures of them, pictures of us doing things. It's to an extent, a lesser extent, pictures of where we were. But over time, I have discovered that I am much more interested in sharing what I am seeing with people, especially if what I'm seeing is something they might not have a chance to see because it's remote or, I don't know, just something unusual. And it's evolved. My photography has evolved from telling my own story to sharing other places and experiences with people. So I don't know. It depends on how much your hobby evolves, I think, whether you can stick with it for a terribly long time. What about you? Photography is it's like relatively new for you, and yet it's not.
Yeah, that's an interesting point of view, because I would say that, I've been interested in it for a long time, and it's my parents' fault, obviously, because they took a lot of photos. My grandfather was known for it in the family because he would do these really fun slideshows. And I think it's something that's gone through. My mom had a college course for a little while that she was taking where she had to shoot and develop. She was like making her own little dark room in the laundry room. And I remember being in the dark room just thinking, this is so cool. And over time that came up. So it's kind of fun that like I've been able to shoot things. Like for instance, I took this picture of doors because I know you like doors and stuff. So it's kind of fun that that's another thing you can do with photography is you can share interests in that way. Dad says your mother and I went with her brothers and their wives to a door knocker walk in Boston. I assume presumably to look at door knockers. I imagine you don't run up and knock on some doors and run. But like I think that's kind of neat too. It's fun that you can set up walks around certain appealing tastes or something.
It's also interesting to learn about other people's hobbies and give them a try, even if you end up not having interest. So Samantha Stone, one of our marketing friends, she tries a new hobby every year. That's what Katie Robert and I talked to her about on Punch Out with Katie and Kerry. Just a new hobby every year. Pick it up. Some of them stick, some of them don't, but she tries something different. My sister convinced me to go with her to a women's shooting event, not like shooting women, but like women shooting guns at a shooting range. And I had I would say less than no interest in it, but it ended up being interesting and fun. And I wasn't terrible at it. So that was exciting. I could shoot a target from far away. But I mean, I get why people like it. I still wouldn't, it's not my thing. But it was a chance for us to bond over something and have a new experience. Well, for me to have a new experience and to see what she enjoys and what she does with her spare time, because she's a nurse, and so it's a pretty high pressure job. What she does outside of that helps to fill her up so she can go back to the job with a renewed outlook.
I think you learn about people through their hobbies as well, because I think it's interesting what people would want to place their interest in. And sometimes it's a little weird. Like sometimes you're like, oh, I don't know about this person. Other times you're like, oh, well, that's actually the thing that makes you really cool. Like there's some real boring types of roles in life and you can't really help yourself in certain things. And I think that there's times when you have to do something in a hobby because your job isn't that super fun and interesting, but it surely pays the bills. Leslie with her homesteading stuff, she has all those animals and the gardening and the maple syrup. I couldn't think of maple syrup. I don't know why. So I mean, those are hobbies, I guess. They're pursuits that are of value. It would be really funny from someone 150 years ago to think of us calling that as a hobby, but it could be. I think hobbies can add dimensionality to people. Is that what you found doing Punch Out as well?
It's changed my perspective on a lot of the people that we knew or thought we knew, pretty well, but we knew them professionally. Volunteering with an organization that means a lot to them to help children or something like that. Or you'll hear about like David B. Thomas, our friend who's passed away since. He was talking about how his hobbies were immersive, like race car driving. He would go and do one of those things where you could get in a race car and zoom around the track, going insanely breakneck fast, and you can't think about anything else or you're gonna die. So it was interesting to me to see how people used hobbies and to get to know them in a different way. So people who want to shut everything out have these very immersive hobbies. And there's other people who like to sort of think about work problems while they do shipbuilding or something. And that's how they relax and get their ideas. It's like people who say they get their ideas in the shower. There's people who get ideas for work while they're doing their hobbies. Like if some people have working out as like a hobby and they'll spend hours in the gym because they enjoy it. I'm not one of those people, but bless. And they'll use that time sometimes to think of things that are work related. So I like seeing different facets of people. And that's what Punch Out, now I'm doing it. That's what Punch Out does for me.
I just ruined your memory of your own show. Dad says that there are those who like to go to gravestone headstones and rub or something like that. And so, I mean, hey, if that's your kink, that's cool. But I also think that, every now and again, there's a hobby that I look at and I'm like, oh, I had no idea someone could make that a hobby. And for some reason, YouTube decided to start showing me people who had a typewriter hobby. And you know what? I get it because I'm into photography right now and I am interested in some of these old timey cameras. I get why you'd be interested in old typewriters, but the fact that there's a typewriter community and also, so here's the thing. There are people who are super into mechanical keyboards, that kind of keyboard. There is a massive YouTube collection of people that are into this. And I think that that's another thing. I have a question about that to you. Do you think that hobbies that have, for some reason, a YouTube ability to them makes a difference? Like, does the observation of hobbies change thoughts about the hobby?
Oh boy, that's a complicated question. First of all, Anne Handley loves typewriters. She has a little typewriter collection. If it starts to get too big, she'll probably need another tiny house to keep them all in. But I understand the appeal of typewriters because they were like I don't know, for us, it's how, for a lot of people, writing started, in mass communication and that kind of stuff. And they just look cool. But what do I think about YouTube ability of hobbies? I mean, so playing video games used to be you by yourself at home. If your friends were there watching you play,
Well,
it was
hello,
because they were waiting for their turn. So YouTube has changed everything in terms of making gameplay watchable. And the technology for people to play games together, multiplayer online games, that changed everything as well. It's like a whole new, I mean, for some people, you can't even call them hobbies. They're doing it like professionally. But yeah, I think so that definitely, that category of things changed, made it participatory in a way it wasn't before. Other things, I think, yeah, you can sort of, I don't know if I'd say it changes the nature of the hobby or what I think about people, but it makes it possible for people to find each other and to assess how do I say it, like, how the advanced macrame on YouTube, puts them in the same category as you versus like beginners. You might want to get together with people a little bit, better than them, but they don't want to be demoralized by like a master macrame. Is macrame a word?
Is macrame a word is a great question. We're going to wrap up in a minute, but I was going to show you just the tiniest bit of this person. This is sort of funny too, because this is Simply Nailogical, who does all kinds of nail art and nail art equipment reviews and this sort of a thing. This person had a vast YouTube following and was super into this and made gazillions of tutorials. Everybody started to know things about her, like the fact that she liked holographic nail polish and stuff I can't even begin to tell you. What's crazy is she did this for such a long time. She was doing great. She did all kinds of fun stuff so well that she ended up getting her own line of technology, a line of nail polish and nail products or whatever, and now is no longer a YouTuber. Like, she sells her own stuff. So it's even crazier to go from having a hobby to having a hobby that supports you so that it becomes your full business because of that layer of YouTube. That makes it crazy. So,
yeah, I wish people could think about it that way. I think a lot of YouTubers try to make it look as though they've got a Lambo because of what they do, or they have a big mansion because of what they do. And it's a disservice, really, because you can make a living at something you love. You don't have to get rich off it. I feel like that, for a lot of people, is a fool's errand. I wish, like my kids, for example, if they could think, I can support myself, you don't have to be rich, they could see a path forward to doing what they loved more easily. I think the whole get rich idea around YouTube and other things has crippled people who might otherwise pursue their hobby as a profession or a job.
That makes sense to me. Our good friend Debbie Saviano says, this weekend I'm doing some pictures thanks to your inspiration and modeling, Chris. Well, good. I'm really glad. I mean, why don't we end it with that? Why don't we end the idea? Because we're going to close the episode out. It's a weekend. Whatever you have for a camera, the one on your phone is fine. By the way, your phone sensor is more powerful than most of the other cameras from a lot of years back, even a handful of years back. So you've got on board a pretty professional rig right out of the gate if you have a reasonably new Android or iPhone. So get out there.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
All right, who are you picking? I guess, seeing as it's your selection.
I never get to pick. Do I get to pick? You never let me pick. I would pick Jonathan.
Drunk with power, that's what you are. So I was going to say go out there and shoot some snaps before I was told that we needed to do person of the day. So yeah, go out and get some snaps. Let's bring them back, wherever you want to share them. Share them on LinkedIn, share them on, someplace I can view, seeing as I'm being kicked off of all the social networks one at a time. Take some photos and let's come back around.
You're being kicked off the social networks?
Dude, I don't know. Instagram booted me for some reason, and then this other one booted me and something. And I just wish I had my Grammy to talk about, because she passed away before social networks came. But she did have an overlying thought that I guess would apply to social networks, because she always said this about interacting with people, and I think it's true here, is that